Purity Amidst Madness. Chapter 6. I awoke to the sound of Sid grumbling in his sleep. I'm not sure why it woke me up, but I decided to cast an eye across the camp before going back to sleep. Over by the fire, Lavian chatted quietly with Mestadio as the pair filled second watch, while the rest of my companions slept peacefully. Save one. Ramza's bedroll was empty. I sat up, suddenly awake at the realization. I tossed aside my blanket, unconsciously grabbing my sword as I got to my feet and slipping the sheathed blade through the sash tying my nightclothes together. Mestadio caught my eye and tilted his head towards the path to Gari land. We'd made it halfway to the city before Ramza had called the halt, pushing us hard after the fight we'd faced at St. Muran Temple. In fact, he'd been especially harsh in the way he pushed us, I realized. Reflecting on the look as I walked along the path to where he now wasted his sleeping hours, I recognized the look on his face as he pushed us for just one more mile, as something I'd never seen, not once, made itself plain on his youthful visage: desperation. Desperate had never described Ramza Beolv, I realized with a startling chill. Not once had he even seemed to entertain the thought of defeat. Beside my sudden realization, I placed my memories of his deeds. Deeds such as dueling Lukavi, Tg Sid, and assaulting temples and small fortresses which had not seen enemy forces within their halls for decades, if not centuries. So it was with great trepidation that I slowly advanced along the dirt path, gently pushing aside tree branches as I made my way through the wilderness. "I can help you save her," a voice whispered beside me, and I spun to find nothing beside me, nobody even close. Another voice interrupted, "No, let me. Your dear sister can be back with you, if you only take my power." I was sure, then, that I must be going mad. I ignored the voices as I continued my midnight journey, pausing as I broke through the brush leading to a clearing. In the middle of the grassy plain stood Ramza, clutching one of the holy stones tightly in one hand, his head bowed forward. My heart leapt to my throat as I realized that the rest of the holy stones this young man had gathered were slowly circling him, casting their own pale light as the moonlight from on high turned his eyes into pits of the darkest shadow. "Alma can be yours again," a voice assured him. "Vormav will be as nothing beside your power if you take me in your hand and open your heart to me," another promised. "I will give you the strength to shatter or bond to the foundation and rip your sister from the pretender's arms," proclaimed a third. All the while, Ramza's fingers just shook with the strength he squeezed the stone in his hands with. "Even if she's dead, I can bring her back to you," one voice promised after a long pause. "I brought back Rafa's brother, Malak. You know that this power is mine to grant to you. Worry not for your sister and put your faith and your trust within me." Ajora dem me if that wasn't tempting. I thought of my own brother, lost to Vormav's machinations. Had that promise been made to me, I would have been hard-pressed to refuse it. Islud, back to life and as energetic as ever instead of a cold corpse buried in some unmarked mass grave outside of Ryavanes. My heart leapt to my throat. "She could be back with you. Always within your sight and close enough for you to protect. With just your meager power, you've already fought Hashmalam to a standstill. With any one of us, nothing in Evilise, not the Nantan and Hokyu 10 combined, could stand in your way." An insidious voice put in, and I saw Ramza's eyes clench in their sockets as the blonde boy flinched. The stones floated silently as Ramza clenched one of them to his chest, the only sound in my ears the creaking of his leather glove as his fingers sought to crush the thing in his grasp.
Take us all up! Shatter the ground where you walk and make your enemies fear the day they ever crossed you. Alma will forever be protected by you. You can steal Ovelia from Delita's hands, and rule Evilise as it should be ruled. A kind and just nation, bowing to your every will.
The final voice promised, to the cheering of the other stones. The noise of Ramza's stressed leather gloves ceased, and I knew the Beowulf had reached his decision. My hand found my hilt as I prepared myself to die. Greater men than Ramza had succumbed to the lure of the stones. As my blade slowly rasped on the sheath, my mind idly wandered as I tried to imagine just what this young man before me could do with the power of the stones backing him. He had nearly dueled T.G. Sid already, and that was without the magical or physical boost they granted him. With them, he would be unstoppable. Nothing in existence could stop him, and as his hands relaxed I knew he knew it. He knew all he needed to do was give in, and Alma would be his for the taking. As would Evilise and everything else he'd ever desired.
No,
the Beowulf's quiet voice spoke, and my fingers went nerveless.
Without us, you will,
one voice began, only to be interrupted.
Without you, I might lose her. But if I dared to take you, she would lose her soul. With you I could save everyone but her.
Ramza stated, forcing the stone into his pouch. The rest dropped to the ground with dull thuds as the blond boy's voice caught and he choked back a sob.
I'll walk into hell unarmed and alone before a single hair on her head is harmed.
The stones lost their shine and became nothing more than that which I'd seen ever them as Ramza sank to his knees. I had seen him unarmed in the past, both the first time I'd ever fought him and many times more. I'd seen him without his armor or even the blue shirt he currently wore a few times when we'd camped near enough to a stream that he, Mustadio, Sid, and Malak could sneak away to bathe. Yet I'd never seen him as naked as I was seeing him in that moment.
You can stop tempting me. I've seen the yield of the fruit you offer.
Ramza declared, gathering the stones and forcing them into his belt pouch. He glanced up at the bright moon as he rested a hand on the bulging sack hanging from his waist, squeezing tightly.
I will save Alma with the strength of my friends and the strength of my own conviction and nothing else. I will take no poisoned fruit to nurture my sister with. She only remains as pure and as innocent as I do, if I'm to take responsibility for saving her. Without us, you will fall,
a serpentine voice promised darkly.
With you unleashed, Evilise will fall. You'll see the bottom of the ocean before I use you to rescue Alma or allow you any more influence.
Ramza muttered, abruptly sitting, his legs crossed. And it was then that I finally understood why the cagey old bastard teaching me swordplay had kept pushing me towards this young man. Ramza's focus was solely on saving his sister, perhaps rightfully so, but without that goal, he would be directionless. Easy for the Lukavi to influence, with the stones gathered at his belt pouch. And I knew that, without somebody to love with the ferocity with which he loved his sister, he would become easy prey, no matter his strength. My sword dropped to the dirt as I considered the young man, wondering if I dared to be the pillar which he relied on for his strength. I liked him well enough for all the short time I'd known him. Yet, how could I admit that I was falling in love with a man I'd known only weeks? His prowess in battle, I'll admit, was no small lure. I doubted I would ever meet his equal. Yet there was more than that to him. The shy manner in which he dealt with everyone in our group, the way he was so soft outside of the deadliest of our battles. the hardness which emerged only when he needed to make a tough decision or face a foe outside of mortal comprehension. The selfless dedication to a sister involved in political and spiritual machinations beyond her comprehension. He was a creature who was solid as a diamond, but much like one, he had deep-seated faults which could unmake him with the wrong sort of pressure. Much as I could appreciate his good aspects, I was forced to realize that any woman who decided to claim him would have to be as strong as was, if not stronger. She would have to be firm enough to deal with his softness, yet yield to his harder side. A constant battle of wills with a man who was both the hardest man in Evilise and more soft than a child fresh off his mother's apron strings. What woman could want that? Yet I thought on the matter further. Orlando must have seen the boy's faults far quicker than I had. I considered that beside the way he'd dismissed Agrias and Rafa already. Agrias was, by herself, far too tough and grounded to deal with Ramza. She was always so serious and tightly wound that she would run roughshod over any moments of weakness the boy displayed. Without meaning to, she would be an overbearing harpy overriding the young man at any sign of hesitation, leaving him crippled, unable to make the sort of decisions he'd been forced to make. Rafa was the polar opposite, perhaps even broken and unable to speak her mind to a man. She flinched whenever anyone with a voice baritone or lower spoke, and even Ramza's voice caused her to shrink into herself if she wasn't expecting him to speak. She wouldn't provide the sort of counter-support that the young man needed through life, always agreeing with him until he lead them both into their death. I resented the old bastard making the decision that I was right for the sole remaining the old man. I could decide for myself what I wanted, what sort of man I felt right for me. Sid or not, Orlando had no right deciding my husband for me and pushing me towards him the way he had. His innocent comments and lewd jokes took on a whole new meaning as I filtered them through the perception of a battle-hardened strategist very intimately involved in knowing just how to push another mind into making a decision or taking a certain path. A rustle at my side interrupted my chain of thought. I'm not even sure I should have been surprised in the least to find the old goat standing beside me.
I've seen him fight them off like that 2 or 3 times, now. Agrias has done as much a dozen times. Neither of us has had the stupidity to drop our blades the way you have.
Orlando admitted somberly. I couldn't help but notice the way his hand casually gripped the hilt of the blade in his sheath.
You've seen what he can do. I'll not step forward when he's like this.
He paused, flashing me a slight smile.
Anything else is in your hands.
With that, he was gone back towards camp. Ramza hadn't noticed us, having sunk to his knees and clutched his sword in one hand, the zodiac stone clutched tightly to his heart. With one hand, Ramza clenched his defiance of the evils being offered to him, yet with the other, he clearly desired to take up that power. Under the moonlight, for the first time, I saw what a truly broken individual Ramzabeul was. He was pitiful. His frame shook with the weakness inherent in him. The fact that he'd stood against the forces he had for as long as he'd remained stalwart was a miracle of its own. I reclaimed my blade as I stood, pausing for only a moment before I made my decision. He'd fought for this entire country. Honestly speaking, the fight he'd chosen to take up against the will of his brothers, against the will of his superiors, against the will of every noble in Evilise, it was a fight I myself had chosen to take up when I'd made the decision to be a shrine knight. In the face of everything, I could no longer deny my feelings for the man in front of me. I brushed aside the branches separating me from the clearing where, once again, he'd defied beings beyond my comprehension to make his own mark on the world. I said nothing as I gathered his confused form in my arms, hugging him tight. It was only a moment or two before he hugged me back, just as strong.